and welcome to The World Today. I'm Temi Tokwe Fagbemi. Coming up on today's program, Iran criticizes new sanctions imposed by the United States over its ballistic missile program a day after economic sanctions were lifted.
Senator Sanders.
U.S. Democratic candidates clash on gun control and health care in their liveliest TV debate so far. And Mali vows to help Burkina Faso tackle Islamist militants after a hotel attack in Ouagadougou that left 29 people dead over the weekend. Iran has criticized new sanctions imposed by the United States over its ballistic missile program, saying it has no legal or moral legitimacy. The U.S. move comes after global economic sanctions on Iran were lifted in line with a deal on its nuclear program. In October, Iran tested a precision-guided ballistic missile capable of delivering a nuclear warhead in defiance of a UN ban. The new sanctions prevent 11 entities and individuals linked to the program from using the U.S. banking system. A UN resolution endorsing the 2015 nuclear agreement between Iran and world powers call on Iran to refrain from testing missiles designed to carry nuclear weapons. In the meantime, President Barack Obama has welcomed the implementation of a nuclear deal with Iran, saying world powers have cut off every path Tehran has to a nuclear bomb. The president says the United States still has significant differences with Iran and will continue to enforce sanctions against its ballistic missile program. 4 American Iranians in Iran and 7 Iranians in the U.S. were also freed in a prisoner swap deal on the day sanctions were lifted.
This is a good day because once again we're seeing what's possible with strong American diplomacy. As I said in my State of the Union address, ensuring the security of the United States and the safety of our people demands a smart, patient, and disciplined approach to the world. That includes our diplomacy with the Islamic Republic of Iran. For decades, our differences with Iran meant that our governments almost never spoke to each other. Ultimately, that did not advance America's interests. We have now cut off every single path that Iran could have used to build a bomb. Whereas it would have taken Iran 2 to 3 months to break out with enough material to rush to a bomb, we've now extended that breakout time to a year. And with the world's unprecedented inspections and access to Iran's program, we'll know if Iran ever tries to break out. Now that Iran's actions have been verified, it can begin to receive relief from certain nuclear sanctions and gain access to its own money that had been frozen. And perhaps most important of all, we've achieved this historic progress through diplomacy without resorting to another war in the Middle East.
Well, Pamela Dawkins, the VOA State Department correspondent, joins us live on the program to further discuss this issue. You're welcome to the program, Pam.
Thank you.
Now, why did the United States wait until after lifting economic sanctions on Iran to impose the missile test sanctions?
Well, a senior administration official says the United States did not want to complicate a very sensitive effort that was underway to bring the American hostages home. The status of the U.S. detained Americans who were detained is something that Secretary of State John Kerry has said he had been raising with his Iranian counterpart, Mohammad Javad Zarif, in nuclear talks, and quietly there had been U.S. progress with Iran on efforts to get these Americans freed. There was concern that if the U.S. had imposed the sanctions for Iran's ballistic missile test ahead of time, it could have jeopardized this effort.
But isn't it possible still for these new sanctions to complicate the nuclear deal? Already the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has threatened that any action will be met by a reaction.
Absolutely. It's really too early to say how this will play out in the long term. Keep in mind that Iran's ballistic missile test violations are separate from the provisions in the nuclear deal known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. The world will certainly watch Iran's compliance with the nuclear deal over the coming months. It's ultimately up to the International Atomic Energy Agency to gauge if Iran has remained in compliance. But certainly it comes as no surprise that Iran has responded harshly to these new U.S. sanctions against 5 Iranian nationals and a network of companies with links to its missile activity, with the foreign ministry calling the new sanctions illegitimate.
Let's look at the economic sanctions that were lifted. What impact will this have on Iran and the world markets?
Well, the lifting of the sanctions frees Iran to sell oil on the world markets, and there is initial concern that this could actually be destabilizing in the sense that oil prices are already low. In the U.S., the impact will be fairly limited because other sanctions remain in place on Iran on issues such as its support of terrorist groups. There are a few provisions that will change, including provisions that will allow Iran to buy civilian aircraft parts from the United States, from U.S. companies, for example. Internationally, an analyst said to me that the countries that have previously done business with Iran in the past are the ones that are likely to benefit most from the resumption of those relations. And these countries include China and other Asian countries, and also Russia.
Well, finally, we understand non-nuclear U.S. economic sanctions remain in place, notably the ban on U.S. citizens and companies trading with Iran. Now, what does Tehran have to do before that can be lifted?
Well, that's a good question. These are penalties for Iran's support of terrorist groups such as Hezbollah, as well as human rights violations. And these are issues that would have to be addressed separately by Iran before the sanctions are lifted. Analysts have told me that there is concern that some U.S. businesses could be hesitant about doing business with Iran, even in the limited channels that are open now, because these other sanctions remain in place. And businesses are concerned about being penalized if they stray outside of what is a very complicated set of U.S. guidelines for doing business with Iran.
Well, Pam Dawkins, thank you so much for joining us on The Wall today. Still to come on the program, U.S. Democratic candidates clash on gun control and health care in their liveliest TV debate so far. Please stay with us.